Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Good in Motion podcast. Today, I'm so excited to introduce you to Leena Mehta. Leena is a registered clinical counselor and the founder of At Ease Counseling, where she creates a safe space for individuals, youth, and adults, both in person in Burnaby and online throughout BC. What I love about Leena's approach is how she meets people exactly where they are. Whether they're navigating anxiety, depression, trauma, major life transitions, or working through grief and loss. She's trained in so many powerful therapeutic approaches, from acceptance commitment therapy to EMDR, and she also does incredible work with couples through emotionally focused therapy. Beyond her client work, Leena is also mentoring the next generation of counselors as an approved clinical supervisor. She's really dedicated to expanding access to quality mental health support, and I think you're going to love hearing her story and insights today. Leena, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure as well. It's always good to bring on the platform someone else from Europe because it's something I got to learn about you. You're originally from the UK.
Yes.
You also lived in New Zealand.
That's right. Yes, I did a working holiday visa there.
Tell us maybe a bit more about what each of these life chapters in different countries brought in your personal life and in your career.
I left England more than 10 years ago. So I graduated. I have a master's degree in social work from London. And once I graduated, I worked for a not-for-profit specializing in working with women around domestic violence, family violence, not as a counselor at this point, not as a social worker either. And then I left in 2013 in October to volunteer overseas. So that was the beginning of volunteering in Vietnam. And my original plan was to leave for 3 months. But 3 months turned into 7 months, turned into this 3 years before I ended up going back to England. So I was 26 years old. And this idea of having a backpack or living with people you didn't know was very new. And I was very nervous. But I met some wonderful people from other countries who all were there to volunteer. And this is kind of, I want to say, what led me or inspired me, if you will, to carry on. So the first place I lived was in Paraguay. And again, I volunteered and I worked there. So I taught English. I volunteered at a youth center. And that was just shy of 1 year. And my sister was really missing me. So I spent some time with her in South Africa. They then went back. I then stayed and I volunteered. And my host mum, if you will, Candy, she said, oh, your dad's from Tanzania and you've never been. So go to Tanzania. So at the time I thought, oh, this is, a bit much. But I looked into it and I thought, oh, why not? So I spent another 2 months going from South Africa all the way up Zambia, Zimbabwe, all the way to Tanzania. By that point, I was broke. So I had to make a decision. Do I go back to England or do I find work? So I have friends in Australia who said, oh, you should come to Australia. So Australia is a pivotal point, not just personally, but really professionally, because this is where I worked as a counsellor. So the job I found was in Townsville, which is north of Brisbane. And it was here that I was offered my first position as a counselor. And I was mentored and I was trained. And it was a lot of learning for me because I had never worked as a counselor. After Australia, so that was more or less a year, I went back to England, but also applied for my working holiday visa in New Zealand. Because by this point, I had been away for 3 years and I wanted to carry on. And I was a little bit, I say addicted. I was very enthusiastic about living and learning more about different cultures and traveling. And I had the travel bug, is what my friend said. So I got my working holiday visa for New Zealand. And eventually I did get a job as a counsellor in a very small town in Fielding. And I stayed for over a year. And this was when I got the opportunity to work with children. So very different to working with women. And I absolutely loved it. We spent some time, me and my co-worker, in different schools working with kids. Again, I had training, I was mentored. And really those two job opportunities, both in New Zealand and in Australia, is kind of what led me to carry on working as a counsellor. So leaving New Zealand, but then landed in Canada in 2018. So it's been 7 years, I can't believe it. And so for 2 years, I lived and worked in BC, in Lytton, at a First Nations school, working as a school counsellor. So I learned a lot about Indigenous and First Nation community, culture, history. It was very eye-opening to understand what it was like for people. Thereafter, I moved to Hope, and I worked for a not-for-profit. So I worked as a Stopping the Violence counsellor and was thereafter given the position of counselling supervisor. So I, again, had some training and I managed a team. And then I moved to Vancouver and I started working in Langley as a sexual assault support services counsellor, supporting youth specifically that had been sexually abused or had been sexually assaulted. And it was really after doing that for a year that I ended up starting private practice. So it's been a very long sort of journey, if you will, to where I am now.
Wow. I didn't even, when reading the bio, your introduction, I had only a sample of everything that happened. Many questions come to mind, but first, as someone who also, changed countries, I wonder how you navigated creating a community for yourself since you were traveling so often.
Yeah, when I think back at the volunteering, the way that's set up, not always, but in the experiences I had, there's a volunteer house. So even though, like say, let's go back to Vietnam, I was doing different volunteering roles or at different locations, if you will, we had one base. So that really helped. Same for when I was in Cambodia, same with South Africa. Paraguay was different because I didn't have a volunteer house, but I had made friends. So I made friends, which essentially resulted in me wanting to and essentially staying. Australia, I had a few friends that I stayed with, but when I moved to Townsville, I didn't really know anybody. But I did make friends. I was very fortunate through work. I met other co-workers, and then I met their friends. In Canada, building or finding a community was a little bit different. So I went to a few meetups, a few gatherings downtown, say, but fast forward to, but really moving to Vancouver, I want to say for me, and this is also sort of simultaneously while COVID was going on, we were allowed to still go outside. So hiking really helped. I honestly met some wonderful people doing the hikes, and I carried on hiking, I want to say, for over a year. That really helped me establish friends and a community, and then more recently running. I started running, I do road running, I do trail running. So that has really helped for myself create a sense of belonging and a sense of community.
Do you ever had that feeling of, I don't want to start over?
I don't think so. I think I've had moments when it's been really hard and lonely, for sure. And I think back then when I came, the idea really was to be here for 2 years. And I don't know what was next, but it didn't happen because COVID happened and I stayed. And again, I'm very glad that I did stay, very grateful that I could stay. But I think in the original plan, it was to stay for a couple of years and then see what's next.
I missed the part where maybe you shared what drew you to Canada specifically.
When I lived in Australia and I lived in New Zealand, I don't know for yourself, but for me, I lived in several different hostels. I would work, but I'd also do some touristic things or local things and meet people, essentially, is where I'm going with this. And similar to hiking, similar to running, I find myself meeting people who would say, yet many years ago, oh, I'm either from Canada or I'm going to Canada or you should go to Canada. So it wasn't intentional when I first started to look into it because I was very mindful of my age and where I was in life. And to be perfectly honest, one plan at one point was to stay in New Zealand, to stay in New Zealand. But I also had intended to stay in Australia. So I feel like as much as I had these plans, they were not set in stone. And maybe I was lucky in terms of I didn't have this pull or this overwhelming desire to really stay. Like I met people who would say, oh, I would love to do what you could do, but I have a dog or I have a partner. So I didn't really have that. So the pull for Canada, I think maybe there was also a part of me that wanted to be able to be able to say that I had lived and worked in Canada.
And maybe I feel with the background you've just shared, maybe even staying in Canada is not set in stone. It sounds like you're just ready to start over and see where your heart leads you. I'm curious to know what led you to your field of work that you do now, because it sounds very like definitely it's necessary, and also it feels very heavy. So it's definitely I bet like a life dedication to just take on these big conversations and to hold space for people who need it. So what do you think led you to being this person, this counselor?
So if someone was to ask me when I was 18, I had no clue what I wanted to do. So much so that my undergraduate degree is in history. And at the time, it made complete sense because I really liked history. So hence the degree. Looking back, had I known I would work as a counselor in 10 plus years, I think my choice would have been different. After graduating with history, I was pretty sure I would do social work because social work has that supporting, empowering, vulnerable individuals, families, if you will. However, social work is different. I don't know how much you know or how much your listeners know about social work, but there is differences to working as a counselor. And as much as I admire and I think it's a very honorable profession and a lot of good can come from being a social worker, I realized after my second practicum, so in England, the degree I took, you have two, one non-statutory, so not-for-profit, one statutory, so government, council, if you will, government body. I realized it wasn't for me. I wanted to do more frontline work and have less bureaucracy. I didn't want to necessarily be either running or in child protection conferences. That wasn't what appealed to me. So when I was in Australia and I was able to work as a counselor for the first time, I learned that maybe, just maybe, this was for me. Now, back in Australia, I should also say, I predominantly worked with women, and it was mainly women that experienced domestic violence, family violence, and then there was sometimes other things around grief and loss and relationships. So that was my first real opportunity, and I learned not only that I could do it, thankfully, but I was very passionate about the work I did. New Zealand was different because I was working with kids. So working with kids, for anyone, any of your listeners, or for anyone else that works with kids in any capacity, it is very different. Play therapy is something that is very helpful. Understanding a child's world, connecting with a child, like building a rapport, like counseling is very different when compared to working with an adult, which I think is wonderful. But to try and answer your question, I think it evolved. It slowly evolved that this was for me and this is what I want to dedicate my life to. And honestly, I think I have moments now where I don't know what I would do if I wasn't working as a counselor. And I don't mean to say, oh, this is my purpose and this is my calling. I see it as more than a job. Like I see it as something that I truly enjoy. And it's not again, forgive me, it's not the listening to people's hardships that I enjoy, not at all. It's the seeing them grow. It's watching them understand or shift a perspective or their mindset or understand something or be able to overcome something and watching how that then impacts all aspects of their life. That is very rewarding. And having individuals move through the next stage of their life is very humbling, and it's honestly a privilege to be able to be part of someone's journey. You know, I cannot tell you how many individuals I've worked with. And then couples work is more recent. I've been doing that for just over 2 years now. And again, different kind of magic, working with relationships, working with both partners in a room, both of them being able to understand and doing some of that deep work. And it's just very rewarding.
Absolutely, it makes complete sense. Being able to just giving space to someone who's in need and helping them transition to a new chapter of their life where they see maybe more light and they're more excited about the future. I can completely understand that it can feel intensely rewarding. So when you work with such, I feel, heavy topics, I wonder, how do you carry your personal life? Do you have like habits or systems in place to separate maybe your mental load between what's happening in those conversations at work and then, moving through your daily life?
I want to say there's a number of things that I learned with the help of others, supervisors, for example, co-workers. There is something to be said about resilience. You build resilience. The more I've built my resilience, the more I've done this. I certainly, when I was very much younger, very much in the beginning, wanted to, I don't want to say rescue, but perhaps jump in and, fix it, right? For some of us, we enter this profession for a reason, and there can be this overwhelming urge or need to jump in. And quite rightly so, my supervisor was very gentle and kind and said, okay, but it's not about you. So I've always kind of taken that away and been very respectful and mindful. Every individual I work with, every individual that I currently work with and in the future, they are all on their own path. And provided they are safe, they are not a risk to themselves or anybody else, they will get there in their own way. And I am not the expert, and I can trust, and my job really is to help individuals trust that they have everything they need. Sometimes it's under the surface, or we forget, or we haven't used the muscle. So my job is really to help individuals find all of those good things and then maybe add or sprinkle on a few more coping mechanisms or insights. But that's it. So again, to try and answer your question, I have my own supervisor. I have my own supports outside of work. I rarely bring work home, and I reflect and notice on when and if I do. So, for example, you use the word heavy. So there are certain clients, I don't want to say triggers, but certain clients' experiences that weigh on me more than someone else. That's not me saying I care more about these individuals. It's simply me as a counselor. I can reflect on, okay, something's happening to me, right? So I go away in my own supervision, maybe in my own counseling room, and reflect on that. There's something called person of the therapist. So me as a counselor reflecting on my own biases, my own blind spots, and understanding them so I don't bring them to counseling when I'm with a client.
I think this is really interesting because first, when you say you have your own supervisor, does that mean you actually schedule time with them to sit down and talk as well?
Yes, absolutely. So typically it's once a month. Sometimes it can be a little bit more.
Okay. And again, because I'm very interested in knowing, concretely the habits you have. So when you say you reflect on that, do you sit down and journal about it? How do you move through it?
That's a great question. So sometimes, yes, I journal. Sometimes it's when I'm hiking or when I go for my run or when I'm at the gym. I wouldn't say I take my work to all these places, but I reflect on or think about a conversation, something that was shared in the session, and not necessarily from the point of view that I'm worried or I feel stuck, but more so internally, how did I feel? What was going on for me? What could I not do differently, but what else could I do next time I see them? Again, this is not the entire time I'm out hiking or I'm out running. It's moments to moments. Sometimes I'll think of something. So that's kind of what I mean when I say I reflect, but for sure journaling as well. And then there's consultation groups that I am part of, which again are 4 to 6 weeks. So sometimes bringing up a client or a couple with their permission and talking about what I did and maybe getting someone else's, so another counselor's insight and perspective. That can be helpful too.
I think it's it's needed to hear, say that you go on your hike and you're replaying some of the conversations, you're kind of self-assessing yourself, because it will be maybe inauthentic to say that, if you work 9 to 5, at 5 p.m. the thoughts for work are closed, and then start the thoughts of the personal life. It's just not how life happens. So it's good, I think, to share that, sometimes work pops up in our mind, and then it doesn't mean it's there 24/7, but it's okay to unfold them.
Yes.
And reflect.
Yeah, no, for sure. There are certain sessions or clients, even a win. So a client will celebrate a win and I'll still feel happy or really sort of excited for them because of where they are at in their journey. Sometimes it's like I'm waiting to see what happened next. A client starts moving, a client that starts a new job. I'm very curious. So yeah, it doesn't end at 5, or I work till 7 sometimes, so it doesn't end at 7.
And do you find that there's a clear answer to when it's time to ask for help and seek help, and when it's okay to do it on your own and just kind of push through?
I would gently say that sometimes it's about how I feel. If there's some feeling, some people call it their gut feeling or their intuition, if I have this nagging feeling, or I simply want some reassurance as a counselor, right? This is what the client said, we did the safety plan, especially when it's not high risk per se, but when suicide, self-harm, that is something which, as I'm sure you can appreciate, many of us in this profession and in others, we want to do everything we can for the client's best interest, right? So I don't want to go home on a Friday night and then think, oh, I hope my client's going to be okay till Monday, right? And I know I'm not responsible for my client's action, but I want to do everything I can, do my due diligence, and ensure that, yes, when the client said this, I did this, and this is the steps I took, right? I mean, that's maybe an extreme example. Asking for help, sometimes people get stuck, and sometimes people think it's a sign of weakness, but it's really not. Even after 8 years of experience, I'm still learning. I don't know everything. I never claim to know everything because every client I work with is different. And yes, there may be some similarities or some parallels, but I'm very much still learning. And I need the client's help, right? Especially with couples work, they know their relationship, they know where they get stuck. So they're helping me and I help them, right? So it's very much a two-way process.
I love that, and I think it echoes very well with what you said earlier, and it's also something that is written on your website, which is the client is the expert of their own life, and you're not there to fix them, but to guide them, I guess. The choice of words to support. I think the choice of words, and you shared it again here in this conversation, is very powerful, and the way you express your work and your mission, I can feel that there's a lot of, I want to say love, I don't have any other words, but compassion, words, love, patience. It feels very safe to be in your presence, even if, we're meeting through a video. Yeah.
Counseling isn't easy, which is what I say to clients on a regular basis. I sometimes compare it to going to the gym. Some people don't want to go to the gym, right? But rarely does someone come out of the gym and say, oh, that was a waste of time, right? Most people feel good, but they're working hard, right? Counseling is like that. If it was easy, we would have no downtime. We would have wait lists that were so long. Counseling is not easy. So if someone is making that trip to see me virtually or in person, I really honor that. I really see that. And I want to do everything in my power that I can as a counselor to help them feel a little bit comfortable, a little bit at ease, less anxious, less self-conscious. Respectfully, I hear different people's stories. I hear different things. And there is embarrassment or shame, or people judge themselves, self-hatred. I'm there to try and help them with all of that, So none of that is easy to talk about to a complete stranger. So I'm very mindful of that too.
Well, I'm sure that even after a few minutes spent with you, most clients don't feel like you're a stranger, because I feel comfortable with you, but
Thank you.
That's nice. It's a moment of our conversation where I will spin the wheel, and depending on the category we fall on, I will have a specific question that we will both answer. So I will go ahead and I will spin the wheel. Our category for this first question is time. What does a perfect slow day look like for you?
Okay, a slow day. This is a hard question because for my friends and people who know me, I'm not someone who is very good at slowing down. And yet I encourage my clients to do this. Perfect slow day. Giving myself permission to enjoy my breakfast, enjoy my morning cup of tea, to then maybe go for a slow run and not, how can I say pressure, but not push myself too much, but to really enjoy my run or my hike.
The choice of word is not correct here. It's more, what is a day that recharge you? And maybe for you it's hiking and running, and it's totally fine.
Sometimes it can also be not waking up as early, so more sleep, or just again giving myself permission not to be up at 6:30, 7:30. Giving myself permission to maybe do things that are not work related. So that's something else that can be good and help me recharge. But a lot of things come to mind when you say recharge. So spending time with friends, catching up with my family, as we touched on before, with the time difference that can be a little bit tricky sometimes. Yeah, recharging, there's lots of things. Essentially, I hear it as me looking after myself and filling my cup, so to speak, which can encompass so many different things, as I'm sure you can appreciate.
Yeah, so it will be sleeping in, enjoying a slow breakfast with maybe friends even, and then going on a hike or a run, video calling some family members. Is that correct?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
Okay, I love that. I love to know how people fill their own cup because it's important. Yeah. Myself, what does a perfect slow day or a day to refill my cup looks like? It's just, what do I want to do in the moment? I check in with myself and then I do the thing. So sometimes it can be just watching a show, and then I'm thinking, I would like to eat this. And so I go ahead and cook it. It's really, instead of having a strict schedule, just like you shared about waking up at 6:30, 7, it's kind of worrying just about the very next step and always checking in with what I need in that moment. I will go ahead and spin the wheel just a second time.
Okay.
Our second category is physical body. Because you talk about hiking and running, I think this question is very aligned. Is there a physical goal you're excited about right now?
It's funny you asked me that question. I took up running just over a year ago, and I ran my third ultramarathon just over 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago in Squamish. So that was my goal.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
How long is an ultra marathon?
50 kilometers.
50? And what makes it an ultra? Is it the length or the conditions?
I think it's the length. So a marathon typically is 42.2 kilometers, just over 26 miles, but an ultra marathon can be 50, 80, 100, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a third one. Well, congratulations. It's a huge milestone.
Yes. So I signed up. It sells out. So I signed up pretty early, me, my other friends. And towards the end, like with many things, you have doubts, I worry. But I really enjoyed it. It's a beautiful, again, community of people that like to run, different backgrounds, different ages, you name it. But that was my big goal. So for weeks, training.
I don't want to feed, that need to have another goal lined up.
Yeah.
But I am curious to know if you think about something else.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a little bit, I say dangerous, it's a little bit of a slippery slope because the more I do these runs, the more I meet people, right? Similar to what I said before. And I met someone that was from the island who said, oh, we have really great races on the island. Or I meet people from another country and, oh, you should you should come here. So I try not to do too much research. But I guess the next goal, there's 2 other runs, not ultra marathons, but 2 other runs, races, if you will. No, both of them, beg your pardon, are next month. So I will do that in September. And then after that, I think I will just enjoy running with no real race, I think, in mind.
I love that. Honestly, it sounds like a really good balance to have this career where you spend time with people and then outside of work, you exercise, you move your body. It sounds like a really good way to balance those two, like work and life.
Yeah, I would agree, more or less. I spend a lot of time sitting down. So for those of us maybe similar to yourself, I really feel like I need to up and move. I have a lot of energy, so it's a good release. That said, I didn't know this when I started, but the more I meet people, then there's more, not expectation, but more, okay, I can run a little bit more, or I can do the next race. So I have to just be aware of that. And where I'm going with this is not to push myself. So with work, it would be burnout when sometimes newer counselors or people that are newer in their field, maybe there's a little bit of risk of burnout. But similar to running, injuries can happen. Sometimes there's a lapse in judgment. So just to be, yes, again, balance, and trying to be aware of that.
And have you always been active?
Yes and no. It's honestly depended on where I lived. Yoga, I've done a lot of yoga during the years. Hot yoga, Bikram yoga, what have you. Hiking, I want to say, has predominantly been in Canada, more sort of consistently and becoming really something that I look forward to. Running, I've never really been a road runner prior to just over a year ago. I've done a lot of things at the gym, so mainly on the treadmill. So I want to say somewhat active, but perhaps not again, consistently or years on end.
Okay, and yeah, I just realized that I think you said you started running over a year ago.
Yeah.
And you ran 3 ultra marathon. This is wild. This is really wild.
It wasn't the plan. Originally, when I started running last year, my motivation was to do the BMO marathon, which is in May. And I did do that last year. And then I made a friend, you make friends. And she said, oh, you've done a marathon. We can train for this ultra marathon in October. That was the first ultra I did. And yeah, I think I just carried on.
Well, it really makes me want to ask you this other question I have, but I'm not supposed to ask it. It's just for the wheel of life we just did. But how do you know when your body needs rest versus movement?
It's tricky sometimes because I think sometimes there's a disconnect between what my brain or what my mind wants and what the rest of my body wants. So I try and be more diligent and more, let me focus on my body. Sometimes my body will just say, yeah, it's not happening today. We're not moving.
Yeah.
And then what can sometimes happen is my brain is, ooh, we haven't run. We need to run. So trying to balance that, being really gentle with myself and maybe not going for a run, but going for a walk. Maybe not doing a walk, doing some yoga. Sometimes it's just gentle stretching, and other times it's I need to rest and recuperate and recover. Physically, not psychologically for any reason, but just giving myself permission. So it's still a learning, that I have to familiarize myself.
I mean, I love that it's you make compromises, or not compromises, but you check in and you're like,
Yes.
I don't feel like running. I'll do some stretching instead.
Yes, I mean, when you're training, again, for those of your listeners who run or race, there is a training program which many of us will try and follow, whether it's from a running coach, one you downloaded, one that your friend made you. So there are certain runs, kind of respectfully, that you're supposed to do. But that said, I have read and heard people's insight around pushing yourself too much can cause injury. Also, because our body needs rest, right? So for those of us that run, you do a bit of weight training, the body does need time to rest and recuperate before it can go back out.
Do you think it can be the same with your work, where clients really try to fix something fast? They really want to get to the end of it,
Yeah.
but it, like, maybe you need the time for it to happen?
Yeah, very much so. And I think when it comes to working clients, depending on the individual, some of the clients I see, they've had years of, in some cases, they've been through childhood abuse, or they maybe went into an abusive relationship. So or there's multiple traumatic events, experiences. So there is sometimes a sense of urgency or sort of focus on, I want this to change and I want this to change now. And counseling is many things. And I literally spoke to somebody the other day. It's not a quick fix. If it was, we would be working that way. I don't want to say it takes, sessions upon sessions, but depending on what one is working through or trying to process, it takes a little bit of time. So yes, there are clients who very much want to be like, I want this to be done today, And I get that, right? Because they want to feel differently. They want to be able to pursue things and live their life. That's essentially their best life, right? And of course, we want to help them get there. But it doesn't necessarily happen overnight.
I understand. Yeah. Thank you for sharing this. I feel I'm not, you asked at the beginning, you're not sure how much I know about even social work and counseling and even the audience. And for me, it's a whole new world. I did, graphic design. And so I'm learning through these conversations about what it's like, and it opens my mind. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
For our audience members who are based in BC and they want to learn more about, at ease counseling, your services and yourself, where can they contact you?
Oh, sure. So my website, so www.ateasecounseling with one L. I spelt it the American way, not the Canadian way, .ca. So that's my website.
Okay. And just because you've shared a very wide range of people you work with, I just want to ask, in case any audience member has that in mind, is there such a thing like a trauma that is maybe too little or too big to reach out to you with?
No, not at all. There are certain areas of practice that perhaps I don't specialize in. So, for example, I don't specialize in addictions, not because I don't want to, but because it's just not something I'm trained in. I don't have enough knowledge. Eating disorders would be something else. ADHD, there's a lot of counselors, thankfully, nowadays that are trained in that, but I don't specialize in that. The things that I would say I do specialize in, which again, you touched on many of them, I see a lot of women or people of color, anything from anxiety, any kind of anxiety, so generalized anxiety, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, feeling depressed. So I see younger people, older people around this issue, stress, childhood issues, trauma, childhood abuse. So the short answer would be no, not necessarily. Trauma can be one incident, as you say, something that is traumatic, and unpacking and processing that's all that matters. It's not about me or anyone else saying, oh, yes, this is a trauma, or no, sorry, actually, this doesn't qualify. You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Yeah, you made it very clear. I think our audience members will appreciate and understand who you can help. Is there anything else you would like to share on the platform?
I would gently, for those interested in counseling, is to book a consultation, even if it's not with myself at this point, right? I'm not saying book it with me, but book consultations in, because they're free. A lot of counselors offer them, not all, mind you, but a lot of us do. Take advantage of that and see. I encourage individuals, notice how you feel. Did you feel really anxious and tense after you ended your consultation? Did you feel a little bit lighter or calm? Just to notice feelings, because again, as a counselor, I work with lots of different things, but it comes down to, in my humble opinion, how someone feels and where in your body you feel that. And what does that feeling need? How can we either soothe or process that feeling? Because for most of us, no matter how old we are or what walk of life we're from, it's how we feel. And then there's a reaction, or then there's a shutdown, or then there's an avoidance, withdrawal. So a lot of how we live our life is connected to feelings. And I don't think, in my humble opinion, we pay enough attention as society or in even academic, sort of environments to notice that and given support around regulating emotions. So I would just say that. But other than that, thank you for having me. It's been so lovely.